The restaurant went quiet the moment the little girl ran inside. Her eyes were wide, her voice trembling as she clutched the sleeve of the Mafia boss. "Please, hide me from my dad," she whispered. The room froze. No one dared to breathe. The Mafia boss leaned down slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing. But before he could speak, one of his men yanked the girl's tiny backpack open, and what they found inside shocked everyone. Stay with me until the end, because this story will leave you speechless. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now, let's get started. Vincent Caruso was having dinner at his usual table in the corner of Romano's when the chaos began. As the head of the most feared crime family in Chicago, he valued his quiet moments. The restaurant was his sanctuary, a place where business was discussed in hushed tones and respect was absolute. Tonight was supposed to be no different. The heavy wooden doors burst open with such force they slammed against the brick walls. Rain poured in from the storm outside, but what caught everyone's attention wasn't the weather. It was the tiny figure silhouetted against the lightning, her small frame shaking as she stumbled forward on unsteady legs. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her dark hair was matted to her head, soaked from the downpour. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and there was something in her eyes that made even the hardest men in that room shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was terror, but not the kind that comes from being lost or scared of strangers. This was deeper, more primal. The girl's gaze swept across the restaurant until it landed on Vincent. Without hesitation, she ran straight toward him, weaving between tables filled with dangerous men who could end lives with a single phone call. But none of that seemed to matter to her. She had one goal, one desperate mission that drove her forward despite the fear radiating from every inch of her small body. When she reached Vincent's table, she collapsed to her knees and grabbed his expensive suit jacket with both hands. Her fingers were so small they barely made an impression on the fabric, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow cutting through the silence like a blade. "Hide me from my dad." Vincent had seen everything in his 43 years. He'd witnessed betrayals that would make your blood run cold, violence that haunted grown men's dreams, and desperation that drove people to unthinkable acts. But something about this moment was different. The way she looked at him, the raw panic in her voice, the fact that she'd somehow found her way to his table in a room full of killers and thieves. His lieutenant, Marco, immediately stepped forward, his hand moving instinctively toward his jacket where his weapon rested. "Boss, I'll handle this." Kid probably wandered in from the street, but Vincent raised his hand, stopping Marco mid-motion. His dark eyes never left the girl's face as he slowly leaned down toward her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Sophia," she whispered, her grip tightening on his jacket. "Sophia Martinez. My dad, he's coming for me. He said he was going to make me disappear like Mama did, but I don't want to disappear. I want to stay here where it's safe." The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. Every man present understood what disappear meant in their world, but hearing it from the lips of a child sent a chill through even the most hardened criminals. Vincent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a sign that those closest to him recognized as dangerous. "Where's your father now?" Vincent asked, his voice remaining calm despite the storm brewing behind his eyes. "He's looking for me. He was drinking the angry juice again, and he started yelling about how I knew too much. He said I was just like Mama, always watching, always remembering things I shouldn't remember." Sophia's words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for so long that they finally burst free like water through a broken dam. Marco exchanged glances with Tony, another of Vincent's trusted men. They'd both seen their share of domestic situations, but something about this felt different, more urgent, more deadly. "Sophia, how did you know to come here?" Vincent asked gently, though his mind was already racing through possibilities. Romano's wasn't exactly listed in the yellow pages as a safe haven for children. Most people in the neighborhood knew to stay far away from this particular establishment. The little girl reached behind her and pulled her backpack around to her front. It was pink with cartoon unicorns on it, a stark contrast to the grim atmosphere of the restaurant. Mama told me before she went away. She said if something bad happened, if Daddy got too angry, I should find the man with the kind eyes who sits in the corner of the restaurant with the red door. Vincent's breath caught in his throat. Maria Martinez. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. He remembered her now, a beautiful woman with sad eyes who used to clean offices in his territory. She'd approached him once, months ago, desperate for help. Her husband was connected to a rival family, she'd said. He was dangerous, unstable, and she feared for her daughter's safety. Vincent had given her money, told her to leave town, to start fresh somewhere safe. But Maria had never made it out of Chicago. Her body had been found in the river 3 weeks later, another victim of domestic violence that the police were all too eager to file away and forget. "Your mama was a smart woman," Vincent said softly, his voice carrying a weight that made Sophia look up at him with something that might have been hope. "She wanted to keep you safe." "Is she really sleeping with the angels like Daddy said?" Sophia asked, her voice so small it was barely audible. "Because sometimes I think maybe she's just hiding really good, and one day she'll come back." Before Vincent could answer, one of his men burst through the kitchen doors, his face flushed with urgency. "Boss, we got company." 3 cars just pulled up outside. Armed men getting out. They're asking about a little girl. The restaurant erupted into controlled chaos. Chairs scraped against the floor as Vincent's men took defensive positions. Weapons appeared from beneath jackets and tablecloths. The few civilian customers who'd been dining quietly suddenly found themselves escorted through the back exit by men who knew how to make people disappear without a trace. But in the middle of all this preparation for war, Marco made a decision that would change everything. He grabbed Sophia's backpack and yanked it open, expecting to find toys or school supplies. What he found instead made his blood run cold. Bundles of cash, photographs, documents, and a small digital recorder that was still running. Vincent looked down at the contents spilling across his table, his expression shifting from protective concern to something far more dangerous. "Sophia," he said quietly, "what exactly did your mama tell you to remember?" Sophia's small hands trembled as she looked up at Vincent, her dark eyes reflecting the weight of secrets far too heavy for someone her age. "Mama said I had to be her little detective. She taught me how to use the camera on her phone when Daddy wasn't looking. She said someday the pictures would help the good people stop the bad things from happening." Vincent's fingers carefully lifted one of the photographs from the scattered contents. The image made his jaw clench. Bruises, fresh ones and old ones, creating a timeline of violence that painted a horrifying picture. But these weren't just random acts of domestic abuse. The backgrounds in the photos showed locations Vincent recognized: warehouses, meeting spots, places where business was conducted by people who preferred to remain invisible. Marco leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Boss, look at this." He held up a document covered in numbers, dates, and names. Names that Vincent knew belonged to both friends and enemies. The kid's old man wasn't just beating his wife, he was documenting everything. The digital recorder continued its silent work, the red light blinking steadily as it captured every word being spoken in the restaurant. Vincent realized with growing alarm that Sophia's father hadn't just been abusive. He'd been collecting intelligence, using his wife's cleaning jobs as cover to gather information on Vincent's operations and those of rival families. "Sophia, sweetheart, how long has your daddy been making your mama take pictures?" Vincent asked, his voice gentle despite the storm brewing in his chest. "Since before Christmas," she replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Mama cried a lot when she had to do it. She said Daddy was making her hurt the people who were nice to her. But she said if we collected enough evidence, maybe the police would finally listen and help us get away." Vincent's blood ran cold. Maria hadn't just been documenting her own abuse. She'd been forced to spy on him, on his associates, on everyone in their world. The implications were staggering. If this information fell into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything he'd built over 2 decades. The sound of car doors slamming outside made everyone in the restaurant tense. Through the rain-streaked windows, Vincent could see figures moving in the darkness. They weren't his people. "Tony, what are we looking at out there?" Vincent called to his man positioned by the window. "6 men, boss. Maybe more. They're not from any family I recognize. Professional, though. The way they move, the way they're positioned. This ain't some desperate father looking for his kid." Sophia tugged on Vincent's sleeve again, her voice urgent. "That's not just Daddy out there. He brought his work friends. The scary men who gave him money to make Mama take the pictures. They said if anyone ever found out what Mama knew, they'd make our whole family disappear forever." Vincent's mind raced. Maria Martinez hadn't just stumbled into his world by accident. She'd been placed there, forced to spy by people who understood the value of information in their business. And now that she was dead, they needed to eliminate the only remaining witness to their operation. "Marco, get on the phone. I want every available man here in 15 minutes. Tony, start moving the civilians out through the tunnel, and somebody kill those lights." But before anyone could move, the front door exploded inward. The first man through was tall, thin, with the kind of pale complexion that suggested he spent most of his time indoors counting money or planning other people's deaths. His eyes immediately found Vincent's table and the scattered contents of Sophia's backpack. "Mr. Caruso," the man said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Vincent couldn't quite place. "Such a pleasure to finally meet face to face. My name is Klaus Müller. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Vincent slowly stood, his massive frame casting a shadow over Sophia, who had instinctively moved behind his legs. "I don't recall doing business with anyone by that name." Klaus smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Oh, but you have. Through intermediaries, of course. Maria Martinez was one of my most productive assets. She had such wonderful access to information, thanks to her employment in your territory. Pity about her unfortunate accident." The way he said accident made it clear that Maria's death had been anything but accidental. Vincent's hands slowly clenched into fists at his sides. "The child has something that could cause significant problems for both of us," Klaus continued, gesturing toward Sophia with the barrel of his gun. "Financial records, photographs, recordings of conversations. Her mother was quite thorough in her documentation. I'm prepared to offer you a substantial sum to simply look the other way while I collect what's mine." Sophia pressed herself closer to Vincent's legs, her small voice barely audible. "He's the one who hurt Mama. I saw him through the window that night. He made Daddy hold her down while he put the needle in her arm." The restaurant went dead silent. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Vincent's dark eyes fixed on Klaus with the kind of intensity that had made grown men confess to crimes they didn't commit. "You killed a woman in front of her child," Vincent said, his voice so quiet it was almost conversational. "In my territory, without permission. And now you come into my place of business, threatening that same child, expecting me to hand her over like she's a piece of property." Klaus's confident demeanor flickered slightly. "Mr. Caruso, I think you misunderstand the situation. This is purely business. The child is a loose end that needs to be tied up. I'm offering you the courtesy of compensation, but make no mistake, I will leave here with her tonight." Vincent took a step forward, and Sophia moved with him, still clinging to his legs like he was her anchor in a storm. "See, that's where you're wrong, Klaus, because this little girl just became family, and I don't negotiate when it comes to family." The tension in the room was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Vincent's men had quietly positioned themselves around the restaurant, weapons drawn but held low, waiting for their boss's signal. Klaus's people had formed a semicircle near the entrance, clearly professional but outnumbered. Klaus's smile turned cold. "Family? Mr. Caruso, you're a businessman. Surely you understand that sometimes sacrifices must be made for the greater good. The information this child possesses could bring down operations worth millions of dollars. I'm not just talking about your little neighborhood enterprises. This goes much higher than you realize. Higher how? Vincent asked, though something in his gut told him he wasn't going to like the answer. Federal judges, politicians, police commissioners, people who've been very helpful in keeping certain investigations from moving forward. Maria Martinez was documenting more than just street-level operations. She was capturing meetings, recording conversations with people who thought they were untouchable. Sophia's grip on Vincent's legs tightened. Mama said the important people scared her more than Daddy did. She said they wore nice suits but had monster hearts. Vincent felt a chill run down his spine. If what Klaus was saying was true, then Sophia wasn't just in danger from her abusive father and his associates. She was sitting on information that could topple corruption networks, reaching into the highest levels of government. People with that much to lose wouldn't hesitate to eliminate a 7-year-old girl to protect their secrets. The sound of approaching sirens in the distance made everyone in the restaurant tense. Klaus glanced toward the windows, his expression shifting from confident to concerned. "It seems our conversation will have to be cut short," he said, backing toward the door. "But this isn't over, Mr. Caruso. That child has something that doesn't belong to her, and there are people far more dangerous than me who want it back. Consider this your only warning." As Klaus and his men retreated into the storm, Vincent knelt down beside Sophia, his large hands gently touching her shoulders. The little girl looked up at him with eyes that had seen far too much for someone her age. "What happens now?" she whispered. Vincent glanced at the scattered contents of her backpack, at the evidence of corruption and murder that could change everything. Then he looked back at Sophia, at this brave little girl who'd somehow found the courage to walk into a room full of dangerous men because her mother had told her to find someone with kind eyes. "Now, sweetheart, we make sure the right people see what your mama wanted them to see." But Vincent knew they weren't safe yet, not by a long shot. The sirens were getting closer, but he couldn't tell if they belonged to cops on Klaus's payroll or legitimate officers who might actually help. In their world, that distinction could mean the difference between life and death. "Marco, get the car ready. We're leaving through the back," Vincent ordered, scooping Sophia into his arms. The little girl didn't resist. Instead, she wrapped her small arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Somewhere safe while I figure out what to do with all this information your mama left behind." Vincent grabbed the backpack and its scattered contents, stuffing everything back inside. His mind was already working through possibilities, calculating risks, weighing options. The drive through Chicago's rain-soaked streets was tense. Sophia had fallen asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the night's events. But Vincent remained alert. Every set of headlights in his rearview mirror could be Klaus returning with reinforcements. Every police car they passed might be carrying corrupt officers ready to hand Sophia over to the highest bidder. They arrived at a safe house on the south side, a nondescript apartment building that Vincent's organization used for situations exactly like this. Marco swept the area while Tony carried the still-sleeping Sophia upstairs. Vincent followed, the pink backpack feeling heavier with each step. Once inside, Vincent spread Sophia's evidence across a kitchen table under the harsh, fluorescent light. What he saw made his blood boil. Photographs of meetings he'd thought were private. Audio recordings of conversations that could send him to prison for life. Financial documents showing money flows between his organization and people he'd never heard of. But worse than the betrayal was what else the evidence revealed. Maria Martinez hadn't just been spying on Vincent's family. She'd been documenting a network of corruption that reached into every level of Chicago's power structure. Judges who fixed cases, police commanders who buried investigations, politicians who voted on legislation while their pockets were lined with dirty money. "Boss," Marco said quietly, studying one of the photographs over Vincent's shoulder. "This picture was taken at the warehouse last month. The meeting with the Torino family about the port deal. Vincent nodded grimly. Which means Klaus isn't working alone. Someone in our organization fed Maria information about that meeting. Someone told her exactly where to be and when to be there. The implications were staggering. Vincent had always prided himself on running a tight ship, on knowing exactly who he could trust. But Sophia's evidence suggested that betrayal had been festering in his ranks for months, maybe years. Sophia stirred on the couch where Tony had laid her down, her eyes opening slowly. She looked around the unfamiliar apartment with the wariness of a child who'd learned not to trust new places. "Is this where I live now?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. Vincent knelt beside the couch, his expression softer than his men had ever seen it. "For now, sweetheart, until we figure out how to keep you safe permanently." Sophia sat up, clutching a small stuffed rabbit that had been in her backpack. "Mama said the pictures would help catch the bad men. But there are so many bad men. How do we catch them all?" It was a question that cut straight to the heart of Vincent's dilemma. The evidence Sophia possessed could bring down dozens of corrupt officials and criminals, but using it would also expose his own illegal activities and put a target on both their backs that would never disappear. "One at a time," Vincent said finally. "We start with the worst ones first." Over the next 3 days, Vincent's organization worked around the clock to verify Sophia's evidence. What they discovered was a web of corruption more extensive than anyone had imagined. The recordings alone contained enough material to topple half of Chicago's political establishment. But Klaus hadn't been idle either. Reports came in of strangers asking questions in Sophia's old neighborhood. Cars with tinted windows parked outside schools and community centers. Professional surveillance teams staking out locations where Maria Martinez used to work. "They're casting a wide net," Tony reported during a meeting at the safe house. "Word on the street is there's a bounty on the kid. Big money, enough to make even loyal soldiers think twice." Vincent felt the walls closing in. Every hour they delayed was another hour for Klaus and his associates to tighten their grip on the city. But rushing into action with incomplete information could get them all killed. That's when Sophia did something that changed everything again. She walked into the kitchen where Vincent was studying surveillance photos, climbed onto a chair beside him, and pointed to one of the images. "That man was at our house the night Mama died," she said matter-of-factly. Vincent looked closer. The photo showed a well-dressed man in his 50s getting out of an expensive sedan. Vincent recognized him immediately. Judge Harrison Blackwell, one of the most respected members of Chicago's judiciary, a man who'd built his reputation on being tough on organized crime. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Vincent asked gently. Sophia nodded. "He came after Daddy and the needle man left. He looked at Mama lying on the floor, and then he talked to someone on his phone. He said something about cleanup and making sure there were no loose ends." Vincent's hands trembled slightly as he reached for one of the audio recordings. Judge Blackwell's voice was unmistakable, discussing case dismissals and evidence tampering with the casual tone of someone ordering coffee. "Marco," Vincent called, "get me everything we have on Blackwell. Financial records, travel schedules, family members, everything. Boss, if we go after a sitting judge, there's no going back," Marco warned. "That's the kind of move that starts wars." Vincent looked at Sophia, at this brave little girl who'd lost everything but still had the courage to seek justice for her mother. Then he thought about all the other victims, all the cases that had been dismissed or buried because corrupt officials had been paid to look the other way. "The war already started," Vincent said quietly. "We just didn't know we were fighting it." But before Vincent could make his next move, Sophia made one of her own. While the adults were planning their strategy, she'd been listening to more of the recordings on her mother's phone. And what she heard made her walk straight to Vincent with tears streaming down her face. "There's something else," she whispered, holding out the phone. "Something about other kids like me." Vincent took the phone and pressed play. Klaus's voice filled the room, cold and calculating as he discussed something called Project Cleanup. the systematic elimination of witnesses to their corruption network. Not just adults, but their children too. Kids who might have seen too much, heard too much, remembered too much. Sophia wasn't the only child in danger. According to the recording, there were at least 6 other families that had been targeted. Parents who'd been forced to spy or killed for refusing. Children who were now living with relatives or in foster care, unaware that they were being watched, waiting to be eliminated when the time was right. "We have to save them," Sophia said, with the kind of moral clarity that only children possess. "Mama always said we have to help other people when they're in trouble." Vincent stared at the phone. At this evidence of a conspiracy so vast and evil, it took his breath away. He'd spent his entire adult life believing he was one of the bad guys, that his choices had put him on the wrong side of justice. But listening to Klaus and Judge Blackwell discuss the murder of children, like they were talking about taking out the trash, made him realize that maybe, for the first time in his life, he had a chance to be one of the good guys. "Marco, Tony," Vincent said, his voice carrying a weight of decision that his men recognized. "Change of plans. We're not just protecting Sophia anymore. We're going to war." The next phase of their operation required resources and connections that went far beyond Vincent's traditional criminal network. They needed allies who operated in the legitimate world, people who could use Sophia's evidence in ways that would actually bring justice rather than just revenge. Vincent made a phone call he'd never thought he'd make in his lifetime. To FBI agent Sarah Chen, a woman who'd been trying to build a case against his organization for 3 years. A woman he respected, despite the fact that she represented everything he'd spent his life fighting against. "Agent Chen," Vincent said when she answered. "This is Vincent Caruso. I have something you need to see." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Agent Chen responded. "Mr. Caruso, if this is some kind of trap or game, I should warn you that this call is being recorded." "Good," Vincent replied. "I want it recorded. I want everything that happens from this point forward to be documented. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything you think you know about corruption in this city." 2 hours later, Agent Chen sat in the safe house, staring at Sophia's evidence spread across the kitchen table. Her expression shifted from skepticism to shock to barely controlled rage as she absorbed the scope of the conspiracy. "This is enough to bring down half the city government," she said finally. "But it's also enough to get everyone in this room killed. You realize that, don't you?" Vincent nodded. "Which is why we need each other. You need the evidence to build your case. I need federal protection to keep Sophia and the other kids alive long enough for justice to actually happen." Agent Chen looked at Sophia, who was coloring in a book at the kitchen counter, seemingly oblivious to the world-changing conversation happening around her. "What about your organization? Your illegal activities? You understand that cooperating with us means the end of everything you've built." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophia carefully select different colored pencils for her drawing. When he spoke, his voice was different somehow, softer, more human. "Some things are more important than business," he said. "That little girl trusted me to protect her. Her mother died believing that someone would eventually do the right thing with the evidence she'd gathered. I can't let them both down." Agent Chen extended her hand across the table. "Then let's make sure they didn't die for nothing." As Vincent shook her hand, Sophia looked up from her coloring book and smiled. It was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her since the night she'd run into the restaurant. And in that moment, Vincent realized that sometimes the most important victories have nothing to do with money or power or respect. Sometimes they're just about keeping a promise to a little girl who had nowhere else to turn. The war for Sophia's life and the evidence that could change everything was just beginning. But for the first time since this nightmare started, Vincent felt like they might actually have a chance to win. The operation to save the other children began at dawn. Agent Chen had worked through the night, using Sophia's evidence to identify the locations where the remaining targets were hiding. 6 families scattered across 3 states, all connected by the web of corruption that Klaus and Judge Blackwell had woven around them. Vincent stared at the map spread across the table, red pins marking each location. "How do we know Klaus hasn't already moved on them?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. "We don't," Agent Chen admitted. "But the recordings suggest they were waiting for something. Some kind of signal to begin what they called the final phase of Project Cleanup." Sophia looked up from her breakfast, her dark eyes serious beyond her years. "The signal was supposed to be getting me back. Klaus told Daddy that once they had me in the pictures, they could make all the other problems go away too." The weight of that revelation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Sophia wasn't just a victim in this conspiracy. She was the key that would unlock the systematic murder of innocent children whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Which means we have a window," Vincent said, his strategic mind already working through possibilities. "They're waiting for Klaus to report back before they move. If we can get to these kids first, we might be able to save them." Agent Chen nodded. "I've got teams standing by in each location. Federal marshals, child protective services, the works. But there's a problem." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "What kind of problem?" "3 of the families are under the protection of local law enforcement. Officers who, according to your evidence, are on Klaus's payroll. If we move through official channels, we'll be walking these kids straight into a trap." The implications were staggering. Even with federal backing, they couldn't trust the very people who were supposed to protect innocent lives. Vincent felt a familiar anger building in his chest. The same rage that had driven him to a life of crime in the first place. But this time, that anger had a different target. "Then we don't go through official channels," he said quietly. "At least not entirely." Agent Chen studied his face. "What are you proposing?" 6 months later, Sophia Martinez stood in a federal courtroom watching as Judge Harrison Blackwell was led away in handcuffs. Klaus Mueller had been sentenced to life without parole. 17 corrupt officials were behind bars, and Project Cleanup had been completely dismantled. Vincent Caruso had kept his promise. All 7 children were safe, living with loving families under new identities. Sophia herself had been adopted by Agent Chen, who discovered that sometimes the most unlikely partnerships create the strongest bonds. The little girl who once carried evidence of evil in a pink backpack now carries hope instead. Her mother's sacrifice wasn't in vain, and sometimes the scariest looking people really do have the biggest hearts.